5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Eskin. On behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our number 74 or 74th webinar. This is on major donor pipelines. I'm going to introduce our special guest in a moment. First of all, I'd like to introduce Michael Argent with Game Day Media, who's our producer. And by the way, we like to say that you in the audience, you're our bosses. And anytime that if you want to come raise a question or comment, guess what? We'll let you do that. Michael, can you explain how people can either share questions or comments through the chat space? But better yet, I'd rather have them come on camera.
Sure. So if you are listening and you have any questions, we have a few options. The first option is that you can type your question into the chat and then I'll go ahead and read it. Or what we would really prefer is that you hang on to your questions, and then when Jim goes and asks for questions, you can actually turn on your camera and unmute your mic and ask the question then. So those are your two options.
I'm a frustrated coach, and so I like to begin with my chalk talk. And I discussed this with our subject matter expert. And a couple of the key points we want to get across today. Number one, everybody's a winner in philanthropy. And that's the donor, the solicitor, and of course, the beneficiaries. And we're going to be talking about major donor pipelines. And they are absolutely essential with financial stability and your mission having stronger impact. And yes, you're going to learn from an expert that major donor pipelines are possible by that combination of working hard and working smart. And we want to get you any questions, right? And I'm going to introduce them in a moment. The reflection point for this webinar is, can one person make a difference? And I think that is Sandra Cox. Welcome. I think you're our first time. Welcome to. Are you in California, by the way? Okay. Something. Okay. Well, I got one of the coast. And everybody in our audience, they could be a professional or a volunteer nonprofit leader, and they do make a difference. And they work for different nonprofits, but it's passion is their superpower. Okay. And I like it this time, if everybody in the chat space, okay, this is the one time we want to use the chat space. If you could type in your name, the name of your nonprofit, and where you're located. So type in your name, the name of your nonprofit, and your location. And Michael, maybe you can read out some interesting, I know we have a lot of people from Texas, but I think I counted people from something like 17 states represented.
Sure. So we've got Jeremy Cadden, I believe is how you say that, with Military Transition Roundtable, or no, that's a different one. He's with Major Gifts Officer, 2 Life Communities in Boston, Massachusetts. We've got
strange place.
We got Don Gleason with Military Transition Roundtable in San Antonio. We've got Margie Hellshine with America Connected in Boca Raton, Florida.
And we're going to pick on her a little later. Okay. I'd like to introduce our special guest. Larry Raff is president of the fundraising firm Copley, Raff Incorporated. And he's going to talk a little about his firm. We've known each other for about 10 years. We've both been in the business for about 40 years. It means we started when we were 10 years old selling lemonade. And Larry, I think like me, you've been a practitioner for 20 years, and now you've had your fundraising firm for 20 years. Tell us, there are a lot of fundraising firms out there. What makes Copley Raff different?
Well, Jim, hi, everyone. Happy to be with you. We pride ourselves in raising sites and reaching goals for our nonprofit partners from strategic planning through major donor pipeline and campaign council. All of our team members are senior in their field. They've really learned from the trenches on how to get the job done. And we like to meet our clients where they are and then lead them to where they want to be and need to be. And that's,
now, Larry is speaking from West Roxbury, Massachusetts.
Otherwise known as
3 miles from
otherwise
where-
known as Boston, Jim.
Okay, suburban Boston. How's that? And about 3 miles from where I grew up, and this has been a big week in Boston. Monday was a holiday, was Patriots Day, and I think it was the 126th running of the marathon. And I'm amazed, Larry. The course is 26 miles. The winners do it in about 2 hours and a few minutes. I've had cars that couldn't make that good enough time. And by the way, I'm a trivia freak. Boston is referred to the hub. Does anybody know if my philosophy on trivia is this? It's not worth knowing. I want to know it. Does anybody, type it in the chat space, know who coined the expression Boston as the hub? Well, use this at your next Trivial Pursuit contest. It was on the Oliver Wendell Holmes, who was a Supreme Court justice, and he was actually referring to the Massachusetts State House. And then that got changed a little into all of Boston is the hub of the universe. And Larry and I don't have wicked Boston accents. One of their many signature projects is something called the Master Gift Officer Training Program. Larry, could you take a moment to describe what makes that so special?
Happy to, Jim. This is a 4-day immersion program that we ran for about 8 years at outside of Boston, where we developed a model that we dubbed a Master Gift Officer profile. And some of and if you want to see the full list of attributes, it's on my website at copleyraff.com. But some of the attributes are being able to build rapport quickly with donors and with people in your world, getting them to a place of authenticity of the relationship, so that you can accelerate the relationship with them. Asking gifts with delight and confidence is centrally important, and always being positive and curious and self-driven as a gift officer for your organization. Those are just some of the attributes that we trained for 4 days. And now we do private trainings for clients that embody the spirit of being a master gift officer.
Great. And I'll tell you what, this leads right into our next question. Why do you think so many nonprofit leaders who are virtually fearless in everything else in their business, civic, and personal lives, they're fearless, but they are terrified of asking for a gift for their favorite nonprofit?
Well, it's something I call cognitive dissonance, where they
Explain
know
that,
they need to know, they know they need to do that, but they aren't comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
So all human beings just try to avoid doing things they don't feel comfortable doing, even though they know they need to do it. And add to that, money is a complex topic for most Americans. When I do trainings, I'll ask people in the audience, tell me your salary, and they'll all tighten up and they won't tell me, right? So really, there are methods to get through, but the best method is bring your CEO on and ask where you know it's a sure thing. Make him or her feel really good about the result, and that will help them build confidence for the next one and the next one and the next one, and keep their portfolio small. Let's keep it small, just a few names on it, until they get into a rhythm. It works.
The last couple of years have been unlike any we face in the nonprofit and fundraising arena. What do you think we learned about the capabilities and the limitations of virtual fundraising, primarily through video conferencing?
Yeah, I've done a fair number of gift conversations virtually, and fundamentally, gift officers and people who are raising money need to meet the donor where the donor is, and wants them to feel comfortable with the situation. And since so many people now are comfortable with Zoom, there is little distance between the times when we met people in their offices versus being on screen. You can still build rapport with them. There are techniques to build rapport via Zoom just like walking into someone's office and commenting on the photo or the award on the wall, right? Symbol rapport is what it's called, among other things. So the bottom line is work with the donor where they're most comfortable. The meeting is always going to be known ahead of time what the purpose of the meeting is, about talking about a gift. So this medium really is not a barrier to success.
I'll tell you what, let's get the basics now. This is about major donor pipelines. Can you take a moment? How do you define a major gift?
Jim, I don't define a major gift.
Really?
I let nonprofits themselves define the major gift. I've worked with nonprofits where where a major gift was 5,000 or more, and I've worked with nonprofits where a major gift was 100,000 or more.
Yeah.
What's important is secure your nomenclature.
Yeah.
If a major gift is 5,000 plus, always refer to it that way. If a leadership gift is 50,000 plus, always refer to it. If a transformational gift is 250,000, then it always is that. Until, of course, your program is up and running and you're doing better and better, and you might want to bump it a major gift to 10,000 or 15 or 20,000. But as long as there's consistency, everyone internally uses it consistently, you define your metric and then lean into it.
Okay, let's keep the basics. How do you define a donor pipeline?
A donor pipeline is well, first you start with a list of qualified people, and they can be qualified in a variety of ways. They're donors to your organization. They give to other like organizations in your area. They have been referred to you by others. But until you have a known relationship between that person and a stakeholder of your organization, including staff, then they don't become part of your pipeline. Your pipeline is made up of people with whom you have some linkage between your organization and that person. Only then can you begin setting up discovery visits. And when appropriate, a discovery visit leads to having that person put into a portfolio to work by the gift officer or the CEO or a board member or another volunteer toward building a relationship between that person on behalf of your organization. So a pipeline are qualified prospective donors with a link to the organization.
Not cold calls, right?
Oh, no. That's called a suspect.
Okay.
Maybe a prospect, but a suspect.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, we're going to try a new component. We have in our audience, we have CEOs, executive directors, directors of development. We have board chairs, we have board members, we have volunteers, and we have donors. And we like to say, among the members of our webinar audience, we can answer any question, solve any problem. So we're going to throw out a challenge to you all. And if it's okay, Sandra, I like picking on people from Connecticut, okay? What would you do? Say you're a director of development, and also I want to get some other people in our learning community audience to chime in. What would you do if you had a major donor who can't stand the CEO?
Are you asking me this?
No. I'm going to save you, Larry. How about, is there someone else in the audience who'd like to take a crack at this? Who else is in the audience? Kathy Barrera, are you there?
Joel has his hand
Sandy
up.
Holt. Hey, Joel Patowski from the Dallas Fort Worth. Joel.
I am here, Jim. I think the answer to your question is why. I mean, you need to know why this exists to be able to answer it.
I like that. Okay, somebody else take a stab, and then I'd like to get Larry's opinion, and then I'll give my 2 cents. Jeremy, would you like to take a shot at this one?
Sure. I was just suggesting that you can find somebody else in the organization to talk to the CEO. It could be the chairman of the board. It could be, some other senior person. Lots of other options, not just the CEO.
Larry, I'm going to put you on the spot, and I know you have gray hair like me. We have faced this in our career. What's your thinking on this is if you're the vice president of development, you're talking about choosing between your boss and maybe say your largest donor. And that's a tough choice.
Right, it is a tough choice, but I think the last gentleman who spoke had it right. The CEO is not the end all. If you're looking for a prestige representative of the nonprofit, which is effectively the CEO, there are other people of prestige, like the board chair, like another board member, perhaps, like a program director, like a physician or a professor. It could be any number of people. So simply move on from that relationship, unless there's some reason why there must be some communication between the two. Then you simply play the intermediary therapist and find out what's going on and get to the bottom of it.
Right. Hey, Don Gleason, do you want to take a shot at this question?
You bet. I was going to go similar to the first guy, which is you got to find out why. What's going on there, and is this a trend? Maybe they rub the wrong way. Maybe he's just been focusing on donors, And is this a problem with one donor or multiple donors? It could all lead into a new CEO. Who knows? But you got to figure out. Of course, if you're down in the weeds, it may be kind of tough to make some of that happen. But you got to figure out how then to approach these guys.
I like what you're saying too. And I think too, as the vice president of development, you have to play kind of judge. I mean, does the major donor really have a good reason to be mad at the CEO? And so that's right. Is this an isolated example or is there a recurring pattern? By the way, too, one of the reasons I started thinking, the biggest complaint I've had from major donors is the CEO talks too much at events and all, when we had events.
Jim?
Yeah.
Can I just jump in? I think if it's other leaders in the organization, I worry less about working around them. The CEO is a major trust player with an organization. If you're going to give a donation to an organization, the CEO is the person who's going to sit in judgment of how it's spent and recorded, and he's the person who oversees, or she's the person who oversees programs. And so much in the philanthropy world is a trust relationship. I think you have to work to make that better with your CEO. You can't just avoid it.
Thank you. And I like the expression that fundraising happens as fast as the speed of trust. At this time, do we have Margie Helsheim? Margie is the founder and executive director of a great organization called America Connected. But more than that, she has a strong background in wellness. She was a competitive gymnast. She had a gymnast school. She teaches yoga. And Margie, can you come on screen for a second?
Sure. Hi, everybody.
Tell us first of all, tell us, what is America Connected?
So America Connected is a nonprofit which works with cultural diplomacy, bringing people of the world together. And we do hybrid events, international trips, and working on a TV show in search of incredible.
Okay, you're going to be leading a webinar on June 29th, and it's going to be about healthy fundraisers are more successful. And I said, why don't you take a whole 2 or 2.5 minutes and lead us into a breathing exercise before happy hour.
So as you know, from all the work you guys are all doing, it's important to be physically fit and mentally fit. So I'll kind of get started on a few things that may be helpful for you. I'm a former gymnast and competed. And I found when I got out of school that it seemed like a strange concept to have to sit all day at a desk, which is not good for you. And actually, it's a big health hazard, believe it or not. So it's important to take breaks every 10 minutes. And one idea that may help you as you are sitting at your computer, and before I do that, when you start your day, a great teacher once taught me, listen listening to this eat a frog every day. So Ben Case was on this amazing Jim Eskin show last week, 2 weeks ago. And but what he taught me was you always have to eat your frog first. You do what the hardest thing is you have to do. And then you have your whole day. Now, it doesn't always work because, as we all know, sometimes you have that aha moment where the day isn't exactly going the way you think it is. So what I want you to do when that happens is you take a big breath and you're going, and we're going to do this exercise in a minute, and then you can exhale. So let's do it together and you'll see what I mean.
Okay,
I want
okay.
everyone to get comfortable. Take a deep breath in. And I want you to hold it and then exhale. Now we're going to do it one more time and we're going to hold it for 10 seconds. So you're going to inhale, hold it for 10 seconds, hold it. I know you can do it. And exhale. And you'll see that you feel a lot better, a lot calmer. We've readjusted our body, realigned our attitude, and get back to work. And I wish I had more time, but there's just one more thing that I'll mention, and that is something that you should do every day for yourself. Something doesn't have to be big, but something small. And mine might be eat a piece of chocolate. Yours might be and look, chocolate's yummy and it makes you feel good. You might eat spinach. No, you probably wouldn't want to do that. But can you imagine if everyone in the world ate a piece of chocolate every day, how sweet we would be to each other? So I always say, remember to connect with hope and dreams and joy and love, and take a deep breath every day and make it your best day ever. Thanks.
Margie, thank you for sharing that. And we look forward to June 29th. We'll have 60 minutes to learn about body, mind, and soul. By the way, Larry, you were talking about how nonprofit leaders are terrified sometimes of asking for a gift. Who isn't scared at all? Our children and grandchildren, they're not scared at all of asking for money. So we like to say there's the good fundraiser within every board member, every volunteer, every staff member. We just have to let it out. By the way, we want to make sure we're going to send you a copy of all the slides. And if you're not on our mailing list, we'd like you to sign up. That way you will get invited to these webinars and get our monthly newsletter. And also, I was proud 2 years ago to write my first book. It's a quick read. It's 82 pages. And you can order it from there. I'm going to get back to several questions for Larry. And I want to say, anytime the audience has a question, again, you heard from Michael, indicate that you do, or come on screen, because we want you to make sure that your comments and questions are responded to. First of all, American Philanthropy showed incredibly how resilient. It set a record last year. It'll come out, Larry, I think Giving USA comes out in early June. And so we don't have 2021 yet, but in 2020, $471 billion were given of private philanthropy. And that works out to $1 million a minute. And guess what, Don? Those people, the nonprofits that were getting $1 million a minute, they were doing something crazy. What was that? They were asking, okay? And this really hasn't changed. Larry's going to talk about prospect lists. Now, don't get me wrong. I love monies from corporations and foundations, but this hasn't changed in about 60 years. About 70% of that $1 million a minute, or $471 billion, comes from individual philanthropists. And when Larry's talking about major donor pipelines, it used to be kind of an 80-20 split. Now it's an 88%, 12% split. 88% of the gift income just comes from 12% of the donors. This hasn't changed too much. Religion has been the leading recipient. Finally, I want to mention, it's Larry, don't you find it incredible that not only has Mackenzie Scott and Dan Jewett given out over $12 billion to, I think it's 1,257 nonprofits, that was all unrestricted money. We have never seen anything like that, Larry.
I think that's the most important aspect of her giving, is that she's leaving it to leadership to spend the money wisely. Never mind the amount of money she's giving, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go. If you want to ask, I have several questions for Larry. Now, I like everyone, we have a mantra. If everybody could type in the chat space, nonprofit strong. Margie, what are we?
Nonprofit strong.
Okay, Larry, what are we?
Well, nonprofit strong.
Okay, hey, Jeremy, what are we?
Nonprofit strong.
Everybody gets an A in this exam, okay? I'll tell you what, if you have a question or comment, I have a couple now that I want to continue the conversation with Larry. First of all, Larry, what do you suggest you have? By the way, most of our nonprofits tend to be on the smaller to the mid-size part of the equation. What suggestions do you have for setting major donor pipeline goals, particularly for your nonprofit, maybe that's small or mid-size? How about setting goals?
Yeah, well, Jim, setting goals is always a difficult thing to do. But with regard to pipeline, your point of what's the word? The narrowest point of the pipeline is your most restrictive part, and that is the number of discovery visits you can make, right? Because you can't grow your pipeline really until you've got discovery visits done.
Hey, take a moment to explain a discovery visit.
A discovery visit is essentially you have found a connection between someone who's qualified to be a donor or a major donor with say a board member, and the board member helped introduce the two of you, and you're meeting. I'm meeting with Margie for the first time because she's connected through a board member, and I want to sit down and talk to Margie about what her interests are. What's her philanthropy like? Does she have a philanthropy plan? How does my organization's mission fit into her worldview and her objectives? And I'll then size up by learning more about her through research, going to her home perhaps, getting a sense of what she's about, and I'll size her up as to whether she ought to be in someone's portfolio for further follow-up, right? Or to put her into the direct mail list or the email list. So that's what a discovery visit is, and they're profoundly valuable to do. So your tight spots have to do with being able to do discovery visits plus working your portfolio. So how do you feed that? And you want to feed it. You want to feed it through what I call relationship screening. So I build this list of qualified folks from your donor file, right? No surprise there. People who've attended your events and so forth, certain criteria, people who have given to other organizations like your own, and then showing them to your board members and your volunteers and asking them to, in the way Copley Raff does it, circle a few numbers that indicate the depth of the relationship. Yeah, I know him well enough to put a note on an invitation. I know him well enough to take him to dinner, etc. And by that, doing that exercise, you build what's I call a relationship map. And all that is a list of prospects, and then which of your stakeholders is linked to that prospect, and what is the depth of their relationship.
We're going to dig in on that a little deeper.
You immediately have a pipeline by doing screening. So you can set a goal for the number of times you screen with a number of people. That's one thing. That's one measurable. Another measurable is discovery visits, and then there's goals for portfolios, which is 2-hour discussion.
Hey, Larry, we were talking before. most of the nonprofits, there are like 1.5 million nonprofits in the country, and put yourself in the donor's shoe. They're not choosing between good and bad. They're choosing between good and good. But also, most of the nonprofits are small. I think it's something like 88% of that 1.5 million nonprofits have annual budgets under $500,000. Do small and mid-sized nonprofits have any advantages in developing major donor pipelines?
Well, they do, and they're distinct advantages, actually, because smaller nonprofits tend to have much more volunteer involvement. They're more working boards. They have committees for various events. They have other sorts of volunteers that help, say, in the museum or help in the theater or help in the human service organization, which means they have more people with whom to link prospects with stakeholders, right? So you have more screening results to get you to a pipeline. With national organizations or large organizations, and I've worked with many, the volunteers are very far removed from your potential donors. You can show them listen, they won't know anyone. Because your donors are widespread. So it's more difficult to find linkages, personal linkages between prospective donors and your stakeholders. So therefore, smaller nonprofits do have a leg up in building out a pipeline of linked prospective donors and donor candidates.
Hey, this leads perfectly into our next question. What are some of the most effective ways for nonprofits to engage their board members in building a major donor pipeline?
Well, that's everyone's goal, is to get your board energized and involved. And I can tell you, one of the best ways to do it is by screening. If you put a list of 700 or 800 names, and it's not a hard number to reach, of people who are electronically screened for wealth and capacity, who sit on boards of like organizations, their names are published in annual reports as top donors in your community. I'll give you a quick story where I was campaign counsel for the Miami Cancer Institute, and they had a partnership with Memorial Sloan Kettering, but fundraising was a free-for-all. There were no restrictions. Well, Memorial Sloan Kettering published the names of all their donors of 100,000 plus on their website. So I copied all those names, right? Thinking that some of these people own a home in South Florida, no doubt. They're wealthy, they're philanthropic, and they give to cancer. Well, wouldn't you know it? I showed that list to 150 people, doctors, volunteers, and this and that. We came up with dozens of people linked to the Miami Cancer Institute who fit that profile from Memorial Sloan Kettering and and they live in South Florida. It's the same principle. So getting your board involved with looking at lists and lists of people will also stimulate their thinking of, why isn't Mary Smith on this list? And they're going to have their own names. And then finally, when you build this map of relationships, you can go back and say, Shay, you put a 3 next to these 5 names. Let's sit down and talk about what you know about these 5 people who I know are wealthy, who you know, and may be willing to have a discovery visit. That's how you get your board involved.
Hey, Larry, let's approach this from a different side. You've been telling what you should do. What are your no-nos for a nonprofit? What shouldn't they do when they're developing a major donor pipeline?
Be bashful. You should not be bashful.
What do you do if you're bashful?
Get over it. It's what Margie says. If that's the hardest thing you do it in the beginning of the day, right? And get it past you. So what that means basically is try and get outside your comfort zone. If you need to be coached, have an executive coach to help you get over yourself. And to do the job.
And you're not asking. And you're not asking for yourself, you're asking for something much larger than yourself.
Oh, that goes, well, I'm glad you brought it up, but that definitely it comes to, if you're having trouble with those kinds of basic things, then you need to examine your personal mission and how well it aligns with your organizational mission. And you may find that there is misalignment. And if you're not aligned with what you do for a full-time job, day in and day out, with what your organization stands for, well, then you should be looking for another job where there is alignment, because you will always have obstacles in front of you when there's not alignment.
Hey, Larry, no easy questions. Okay, here's one we hear a lot. How do you know the time is right to ask a current donor to increase their level of support?
You don't know until you ask.
Yeah.
Simple as that. I've been writing a blog for 10 years, and I address issues around this question. And essentially what it amounts to is have your case for support, have a compelling reason to ask someone to give more. It might be a special project. It might just be an increased need in executing your mission, right? And praise people for their generosity in the past, and ask them, and by the way, if you have a giving society, you might be asking them to go to the next tier of the giving society. That's a reason to ask for more money, but the real reason is the philanthropic underpinning of your case for support. And you need to have that nailed down, and you just ask. And if they say yes, then it was the right time. And if they say no, then it was the wrong time.
You have a way. Hey, that sounds pretty logical.
Sort of a binary world there.
Yeah, you have a way of just leading into the next question. So you have asked a good donor to be even gooder, okay? But they said no. How can you keep their enthusiasm, high for the nonprofit after they've turned you down for an increase in support?
Right. Well, no isn't always a no, for one thing.
Yeah.
But you always praise them for their past generosity, praise them for their loyalty. If they've been a loyal donor for a long time, you want them to remain engaged with the process. I'm going to give you a real quick story. When I was a frontline fundraiser for the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, and I built a relationship with this gentleman. I got my boss and the chairman of the campaign at the time, Robert Wood Johnson IV. We went to this fellow's house to ask him for a $250,000 gift to the campaign at the time in the 90s. But the big goal was to get to his employer, who I won't get into, but is fabulously wealthy and gave on his behalf. And we get to his apartment, his penthouse, and we asked him for a gift, and he said no. Oh my goodness, right? I want to blow my brains out. My boss, the chairman of the board, we thanked him for everything he did for the organization. We left. I went back to the office. I called him up. I got lunch with him the next day, and he ended up giving $100,000. The reason he said no is because the future of his job came into jeopardy the day before, and he didn't cancel the meeting. And there was no way we could have known it. But we talked, the strength of our relationship prevailed, and he was able to do a $100,000 gift. So no is not always a no, but relationships do matter when it comes to fundraising.
Larry, that reminds me, that was one of your quick takes. I want to put a plug in. We are going to send out a written summary that Larry and I have put together, and then about an hour later, we're going to share a recording of this. And Larry said he's going to give you a reminder on our LinkedIn and Facebook summary of his website. He has something called quick takes, in which Larry, they're 1 or 2 minutes, and that I know you use that precise story. There's just some wonderful hits on it. And will you remind us of your website? And you'll put it on LinkedIn and Facebook too.
Sure thing. It's on my label here. It's CopleyRaff.com, and I do 2 and 3 minute quick stories from the field of my experience raising money, and try to make a lesson out of it. And even though my mother says I have a face for radio, I still put a camera in front of me to discuss the story and to hopefully convey some wisdom along the way.
Okay, Larry, again, no easy questions. You're going to meet with a current donor. You're going to ask them to increase the size of their giving? Who should ask, the staff member or the board member?
Well, whoever has the best relationship and is willing to ask. Not everyone is a solicitor. So board members are always worried that they're going to be asked to ask for a gift, to have a gift conversation. Well, just put them at ease. The answer is no, you don't have to if you don't want to. But we want you in the room. We want you to convey the emotional component of the case for support. We want you to convey why you are a board member and a leader of this organization. Leave the asking to the gift officer, to the CEO, or to another. So you don't have to do that ask. There are some, I've been in situations where the CEO does the ask, and the donor comes back with a much lower number. Then what? You know,
And then what? Okay, Larry, then what?
Well, the then what is you say, oh, thank you very much, and then you revisit the importance of the case for support and why you asked them, him, her for $100,000 and they're offering you 50. And the reason we asked you for $100,000 were for these reasons. And you have these reasons because you've done your research and you know that they're capable of doing it if they wanted to. And so you reiterate the purpose of the campaign, the purpose of the ask if it's not a campaign. And if they come in at 50, then you ask, may we come back and revisit with you toward the end of our fundraising effort? So perhaps you can help us at that time. Always leave the door open for another conversation.
Right. Hey, what do you think of the effectiveness of giving clubs and societies to get donors to increase their giving amounts?
They're effective if the organization is willing to invest in it. And what I mean what I mean by investing is it costs money to have effective giving societies because it needs to be in all of your publications. You need to promote it in social media. It needs to be part of your direct mail efforts. Sometimes there are perks to different levels, right? And so those cost money. I like to call them engagement opportunities. Also, engagement opportunity and different strata are becoming disfavored by the donor community because they don't want you spending money on them. They want you spending money on the mission. It's just simple recognition by list is what most people are looking for. They can be effective, but you need to invest in them. 1, 2, there are annual giving societies. There are lifetime giving societies. There are legacy giving societies. And you need to decide what works for you and what's appropriate for your organization. Shay, did you put your hand up? No?
Do we have, by the way, I can keep on asking questions. Is there someone in the audience that has a question? We'd love to bring you in. Anybody in the audience, either by chat space or the area, come on camera. Anybody questions? I have about 18 more questions ready for Larry, but you're to be the stars of this show. Any other questions out there? Okay, while you're thinking, Larry, what do you think of what we call blended gifts and that combined components of current and deferred commitments?
I love blended gifts for a lot of reasons. First of all, usually the donor hasn't thought of it. They haven't even realized that they could do that. If you're talking about a legacy naming opportunity, I call them legacy naming opportunities because really they're about leaving a legacy, right? Remembering your parents, remembering a lost child, a friend, what have you. They didn't know that they could do an outright gift and an estate gift to get to that objective. 1. 2, you need really good gift acceptance and recognition policies. A lot of organizations don't have them. They're very important to have, especially when it comes to recognition around estate gifts. If the estate gift is irrevocable, that it's sort of a sure thing. Nothing's a sure thing, but if it's irrevocable, you need to be able to have it spelled out in your policies how that's handled so that you can write a gift agreement that's consistent with your policies and that is backed by your policies if the donor has objection to it. And those policies give you a backstop to negotiate for the final gift. So blended gifts are great, and raise them with your donors in those conversations because they haven't thought about them. I worked with a gentleman who gave $1 million gift to a client, and I was talking to him about planned giving, and he came over and I gave him an example of charitable gift annuities. Yeah. This gentleman was 80 years old. He showed me a stack of brochures he received from all of the nonprofits he gave to, right? All these glossy things. He had never heard of a charitable gift annuity. And I guarantee you, in every single one of those brochures discussed a charitable gift annuity, right? People don't read this stuff. It doesn't sink in. It needs a gift officer talking to a person to enlighten them about all the options in front of them.
Hey, talking about options, something probably donor advised funds, DAFs, have become the most dynamic component of American philanthropy. How can our nonprofits do a better job of making them part of the conversation with donors and prospects?
Good question. It's a hot topic. First of all, if you have donors who give through donor advised funds, be sure to flag them on your database. Give them a special code because you need to treat them differently for two reasons. One is they're likely wealthier than the rest of your donor file. The data is clear on that. Two, they've already given the money away. So the nature of your conversation with them about their gift is different. You're not asking them to reach into their pocket. They've already done that. They've already done it for their donor advised fund. What you're asking them for is an allocation of the pie, a slice of the pie, which is their donor advised fund.
Right.
Also, these days, people are under much more pressure to spend down their donor advised fund into the nonprofit community. So you've got some tailwind pushing you in establishing a compelling argument for them to give.
Hey, Larry, we're going to go through, Larry pointed out I prepared 100 slides, and we're going to use them as opportunities to reinforce some of your major points. But again, I want to invite the audience, if you have a question or comment, please come in, and I'm going to ask Larry to reinforce some major points. In fact, this was, I think, from one of your quick takes. Talk about the power of the solicitor.
The power of the solicitor. So there's all kinds of solicitors. One is the friend. One is the CEO with whom there's a relationship, or the physician who you are grateful about. And then there are the prestige solicitors. So when I would walk into a room with Robert Wood Johnson IV, Woody Johnson, who owns the Jets, right? Well, people sort of sat up straighter and they listened more, and they had a way of saying yes to when we asked them for a gift, even though they may never have met him before, or me. They had been warmed up and cultivated by somebody else, and we're the ones who came in and did the solicitation. Another example is those of you who know Pittsburgh, there's something called the Duquesne Club. And there's something called the Queenan Room in the Duquesne Club. Well, I sat with Chuck Queenan as donors came in every half an hour to meet with us, who we had never met before, but they were cultivated through the local chapter of this organization. And we just chatted briefly, asked them for 6 or 7 figure gifts. They said yes, and we thanked them and they left. We'd raised $2 and $3 million at a sitting because of the prestige of Chuck Queenan in the Queenan Room in the Duquesne Club. It is powerful. Not to undermine the importance of all the cultivation that went on ahead of that. To be sure, we were not magical. It's just the confluence of circumstances is important to calculate in your decision about having gift conversations.
Larry, can you expand? You pointed out that pipelines have to be intentional and continuous. Expand on that a little.
Yeah, intentional meaning you're always on the lookout for the right people to add to the screening list. You want to update your screening list so the next time you show it to your board, they're not the same people that they just saw 6 months before. So this is a new batch of prospects that you came to, right? That's intentional. You're always on the lookout for people to refer names to you. You're always asking people to refer names to you. That's intentional. You always want to look back at your donor file for the new donors who have come on board or who have become more loyal over time, because time breeds loyalty, to then add to your list, which then is added to a new screening session. So all these things, and then updating your relationship map shows you of all the prospects.
We're going to get on that in a second. Can you expand? Is it obvious? What's a top prospects list, really, for a small nonprofit? What should a top prospect list be? So
someone who's in your database who are, say, in your top 10% of your total giving, who have given to you loyally over the last 10 years, and maybe their average gift is in the top 20 or 30% of your total, right? Someone who's made a large outright gift in the past year or two or three. Maybe it was buying an auction item at one of your events. Someone who is referred to you by a trusted referral source, a board member, a physician, a professor, what have you. Someone who gives to a similar organization at a high level, right? Or psychographically similar. You may be in food banking, they gave to a homeless shelter, right? Those are people you want to add to the list. People who are large political donors. There's a linear relationship between political giving and philanthropic giving, right? So if you
say that again. I think people are confused on that.
If someone is a large,
say that again.
If someone is a large political donor, chances are they're high net worth households and they're philanthropic people. So you want to look for that in your research. Don't discount the fact that people give politically. So those are important criteria for building your list. And if you want a longer list, you just take the top 20% instead of the top 10%. You know.
Okay, you talked about how do you gauge how deep a relationship is?
How do you gauge how deep a relationship is?
Yeah.
Or for purposes of fundraising?
Yes.
Okay. Here's how we trained it in terms when we taught rapid rapport building. So there's that level of thank goodness for sports teams and the weather, because everyone has that in common, right? Everyone could talk about more or less. They could talk about sports or current events, the weather, to start warming up to one another and getting to know each other, you know, in the organization. The next level is the kids and where they go to school, or where you went to college, you know, that kind of level. And then there's a level of health, family health, politics, which is always a tricky topic to get into. But if you're in a place where you can talk about family's well-being, your personal health challenges, etc., then you're close enough, to be sure, to someone to then raise the specter of giving to the organization. And,
hey, Larry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm breaking in. We've got about 7 minutes left, but you brought up relationship map. I have never heard anybody else talk about it. So take a minute or two and explain how an organization can approach a relationship map.
The relationship map, the way I put it is, you add water and stir and you have a major donor program. And that's really the process. You build your top prospect list like I just described. You put it all on a list. And next to each name, my scale is 1 through 5. You ask people to circle each number that applies. Number 1 is, if I write a note on an invitation to a golf tournament, it'll mean something to this person. Number 2 is, I'm happy to take them to lunch. 3 is, I'm close enough to them to go to dinner socially, right, with our partners, or to introduce to the CEO. 4 is, whether or not you know this person just sold their business, they're wealthy, they just rolled off of a board, you should pay attention to them. And then 5 is, I am willing to open doors and approach this person on behalf of the organization. Circle all that apply. And what you do is you tally all those up for all the people who did the screening, and you come up with a relationship map. This is basically a mail merge between Excel and Word. Simple as that. If you know how to do a mail merge, you can build a relationship map. And what you have is a prospect and all those board members and stakeholders that know that person with a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or 5.
Hey, expand on this. You emphasize that you should cultivate individuals, not organizations. Expand on that.
Well, in corporate fundraising and foundation fundraising, you're always interfacing with a human being, almost always.
Yeah.
Foundations are often arm's length, but you should never hesitate to call up a program officer, introduce yourself, say, listen, this is what we're thinking of coming to the foundation with. Is this something you would entertain? A letter of inquiry or a proposal? But you're talking to a person. And so you, to the best you can, you want to do enough research with that person so that you can build rapport with them at some level, right? And it could be rapport related to age or gender. It could be being from the same part of the country. It could be any number of things. All you need is one thing to make someone feel comfortable with you. If they speak quickly, you speak quickly. If they're a slow talker, I'm serious. If they're slow talkers, you're slow talking. It makes a difference.
Hey, we got a couple of minutes left. I want you to talk about donor lifetime value, but I also want to make sure, is there anyone in the audience that has a final question? Just have a few minutes left. Anybody have a question? Come on, this is it. You guys, let me tell you, Larry, I can't think there's anything that Larry doesn't know. And then as we're waiting for that question, talk about the goal of donor lifetime value.
That's a term that comes out of direct mail marketing. And donor lifetime value is essentially how much do you invest in a donor related to how much they give over time. And it's the typical trajectory is they come in through direct mail or direct email, and they elevate their giving over time, often through more personal contact. Excuse my dog barking there. Through personal contact, through different cases of support that gives you license to ask them for more and more over time. And then you begin looking at them as campaign donors and as estate donors. So so people who matriculate like that over time have the greatest lifetime value, right? So that's what the measurement is really about. And you need a pipeline of donors, right? Through direct mail, for instance, and loyal donors. Loyalty builds lifetime value. So the real trick is, how do you keep your donors? Stewardship, stewardship, stewardship.
Thank you.
The most important place to invest your money is stewardship. It's cheaper to keep a donor than to get a donor. And so.
Hey, repeat that again, will you?
It's cheaper to keep a donor than to get a donor.
And by the way, Maya Angelou we're going to close with this quote. She said, people won't remember what you said. They won't remember what you did. They'll never forget how you made them feel. Our job is to make our donors and prospects feel like the most important people in the world. And Larry, we give a money back guarantee. Will you also back me up here? The more you ask, the more you're going to get.
ABC, always be closing.
Mm, mm.
Always
the way,
be asking.
This one is for Margie with America Connected. John F. Kennedy on June 10th, 1963 talked about, the most basic common link is we all inhabit the same small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future. We're all mortal. In other words, we're all the same. Larry, I got to warn you, when you do such a brilliant job like you have, we're going to invite you back. And please do yourself a favor and go to the Copley Raff website. And there's something called Quick Takes, and you can get words of wisdom packaged in 1 to 2 minutes, which really are terrific. Larry, thank you so much for sharing your time and the leadership you have provided the profession and the sector over the last 40 years. So, by the way, and Michael, we're going to do a little spin dry and have a recording and send that out to everyone. We're also going to post it on LinkedIn and Facebook. That usually takes about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. So I want to thank everybody in our learning community, not only for joining us tonight, but all the wonderful work you do to touch, improve, and save more lives. And thank you, Larry, and I look forward to partnering with you again. Thank you. And go Celtics. Good night. We'll see you.
Thank you.
We'll see you on May 4th. And Margie, thank you. I'm